stem, and the rich field in which it was planted. And he also loved the hot sun beating down on it in the summer afternoon, and the gentle wind causing it to sway in unison with all the other grains, and the gentle rains falling down from heaven and falling off onto the earth. But most of all, the grain of wheat loved talking to the stem. The stem, after all, had lived for a very long time. At least it seemed long to the grain. And because of its longevity, the stem was thought to be very wise indeed. Tell me everything, the grain constantly begged the stem. I don't know everything, the stem would laughingly reply. But I can't tell you what I do know. So the stem, its voice swaying in sync with the gentle breeze, would tell the grain about its life. It told of its time as a grain, how it too loved the sun, the wind, the rain, and the fields. It told of the time when it turned from a part of a green carpet into a rich golden color. Then it told the grain how it dropped off into the rich dark earth and how it died in the depths of the earth. But you can't have died, the grain shot back in horror. You're here, you're alive. Yes, I did die, the stem calmly replied. If I hadn't died, you and the other grains wouldn't be here now. Very truly, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. I'm not sure I like it, but I think I understand, replied the grain. If I want to truly live, first, I have to die. Once there was a man, although the word man isn't quite right, for he was much, much more than just a man. Angels foretold his birth and sang in celebration above the place where he entered the human world. He grew not only in body, but in wisdom. At the proper time, he began to walk across hills and valleys and through cities and villages. And as he walked, he taught and healed and showed everyone who followed him just what it was to love like God loved. There came a time when he truly knew just what lay ahead of him. He told those who surround him how he would be lifted up, how in the lifting he would die. Most humans who live and breathe on the face of the earth have no choice about life or death. But this man did have a choice. He did not want to die the death that he knew was his proper death. If possible, take this away from me, please. He would later pray on a very, very dark night. But he knew he would not draw all people to himself unless he walked the path laid before him. He wanted to bear the fruit of life for all of God's people. And being the more than a man, this man named Jesus knew and said, very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He knew if he would bring God's people life, first, he would have to die. Once there were those who followed Jesus the Christ, the Messiah, the one who brought life to God's people. Each of those who followed were joined by a covenant through dying and rising again through the waters of baptism. And in the newness of their lives, they spread out and followed in many, many different ways. Some followed in name only. Individually or in groups, they held tightly to their own life, thinking consciously or perhaps unconsciously of only how to please themselves. Sometimes they felt they gained much in this way. At other times, their pleasure wasn't gained or it just faded away over time, leaving them empty or bitter or anxious, envious of those who had reached their own life's goals. But sometimes those who followed the one named Jesus found themselves searching for something deeper in life. Perhaps they felt they were missing what they were called to do. Perhaps their own path wasn't bearing enough fruit. Or perhaps they wondered if following Jesus involves more than just their own desires. And they found the words of Jesus. Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much much fruit. They died and found what was missing inside them. They died and found their lives bearing much fruit, and turning from their own lives, and dying to their own path, and turning instead to the path that Jesus wanted them to travel. They discovered a richness and joy that they never could have imagined. Most of all, they found they understood the most essential truth about Jesus' path. If you want to truly and fully live, first, you have to die. To God alone we